Now, now everybody's been waiting on this. I posted a conversation with the OG Barefoot Pookie many years ago about the Peacemaker, and people have been asking me on the channel. They've been asking me a lot. Do you have the Peacemaker from the LA Gang War Season 1? And I finally found it. I found a good copy, so I'm going to be analyzing this, and I think ODS or OBS is set up pretty cool. So, I hope y'all enjoy the analysis. I'm going to be doing a little bit of pausing and kind of going through a couple different things, as I kind of learned some things as we were going along. So, here it goes. I believe that Ice-T might have been one of the executive producers for this. A lot of people have seen this before. It came out sometime. I think it was in like 2000 and I don't know when this came out. The Peacemaker LA. Let me see when it came out. The Peacemaker LA. The Peacemaker LA came out when? 2010. So it came out in 2010. The Peacemaker LA Gang Wars. Executive produced by Ice-T with gang mediator Malik Spellman. It didn't last a really long time, but we'll keep it going. I'm gonna go past the music.
Fist fight a few days.
When I first heard their name, I didn't really know who that was. Let me see if I can find out. Is this really? Oh, okay. I thought it was just a little offshoot or something like that. But when I go on, okay, so hold on. We're going to do a little analysis here. Okay, so Mad Ass Gangsters. So they're on the west side of Inglewood, it says. Around Prairie Avenue, 111th. Okay, they were featured on the show called Peacemaker to settle a feud with the Gardena Paybacks. They have a close alliance with the 118 Street Gangsters. Yeah, I didn't know. I thought this was just some offshoot or whatever the case may be. Allies include 8 Trays, 4 Trays. Rivals include Center Park Bloods, Weirdo Gangster Bloods, Inglewood Families, Crenshaw Mafias, Avenue Pyrus, Neighborhood Pyrus, Denver Lane. Okay, all right. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought it was just something that. So okay, all right. Now, a little bit of history. And I'm just looking it up as I go along. The Gardena Paybacks, located on the west side of Gardena. They consist of 3 cliques. Okay? Started over 30 years ago by Barefoot Pookie, Angelo White. He also participated in the creation of the Crips along with Raymond Washington of the East Side Crips. OG Pookie and fellow Paybacks was featured in a documentary movie called Dead Homies. A lot of people have seen that. Then they mentioned something about the Peacemaker. Allies of the Shotguns, they said. They're also allies of Compton Crips. They've had a bitter rival feud, a feud with the Gardena Psychos 13, which is a Hispanic gang. So they've been feuding over 20 years, it says. Other rivals include Hawthorne, Pyrus, 120th Avenue, Raymonds, and Navarro 204th. Okay. So just to give you a little background on how long if y'all wonder why I put this clip up a long time ago. Me and my brother was sitting there watching this small piece. And he was watching it and it was just kind of cracking him up the way that the OG was kind of explaining things about a fade. He was requiring that a fade has to happen for respect. He was taking it old school, like, hey, if there's been some disrespect, these dudes need to go out here and get a fade. So he would always say, well, if it takes a fade, then we're going to have to go that route. So I decided to go, when I loaded up that clip and stuff like that, I showed my brother, like, do you remember this part? And he was cracking up like, oh, yeah, I remember that. He said, if it takes a fade, then we got to go that route. So they're trying to take it back. to, he's OG, so he's taking it back to old school. When the Crips started, it wasn't as much gunplay initially. Remember, a lot of these groups in LA, when they started off just fighting. There was scuffles, so it was about your knuckle game. So he's taking it back to the knuckle game. He said, okay, if there's a problem, then we need to go. He says they're not from Ada Gardena. That's why, that's why I kind of looked these guys up. Like, are these kind of some no-name dudes or something like that? I heard of Payback before, but I don't know about these other guys. So I kind of looked it up. He said they're not Ada Gardena. Maybe he's saying they're not original.
You're not. That's yet to be determined by their own set. These dudes is youngsters.
But point of the matter, I just want to bring this article up because it's pertinent. How this may spread. If you look right here, this is a website, the United States Attorney's Office, Eastern District of New York. 4 members and associates of Staten Island, home of the Wu-Tang Clan. Staten Island Payback Crips charged with armed kidnapping and robbery, including a 16-month-old. You see? This ain't me talking. This is the attorney, Eastern District of New York. This is how bad it can get. Barefoot Pookie saying, hey, there's a fade. Rest in peace to him. If there's a fade, you take the fade, let him kind of move around a little bit. But this is where it could go. Criminal complaint was unsealed today in federal court in Brooklyn charging Alan Floyd and Edward Gote, alleged members of the Payback Crips. Gote. Kind of last name is Gote. I'm just curious. I'm just curious. What kind of name is Gote? I don't know, but I'm just curious. Alleged Crip members charged with armed kidnapping. One victim was a 16-year-old. February 27, 2019. This is crazy. I'm actually looking at the damn evidence here. They got the bullets here. They got the pipe. Edward Gote. Just saying. I'm wondering what kind of name is Edward Gote? I'm just wondering. Edward Gote. Is this in New York as well? Just give me a second here, y'all. Give me a second. This is on case text, by the way. When I look up the last word, Gote, it shows up as a Puerto Rican name. This is in New York. And this is all over the news. Yeah, they're not showing pictures of these guys. Kidnapping of a toddler. A standoff ends in gunfire. 7 of the most harrowing gang-related cases on Staten Island. Here's some of the most notable incidents to occur on the island in recent years. An old lady was shot. Crip members kidnapped couples and a toddler. Staten Island residents Edward Gote, Young God Ed, Baron Brown, Jason Ortiz. A Facebook photo of John who shows a reputed Gorilla Stone Mafia leader perched on a park bench in the vicinity of what appears to be Stapleton houses. Doesn't look like a black man. Just wondering. Gorilla Stone Mafia member Avanti Brock. Latin King Game, 2017. This is one of the guns that was in one of the crimes. They're talking about all the Bloods leader standoff in the cop 2015. Leandro Roses collect money during a rally. Okay, yeah. Don't look like no black folks did all this. Immigrant stabbed by Latin Kings, 2005. Okay, so this is all the in-depth. This is all of New York, gangs of Staten Island. The final installment of the series examining the culture, inner workings, and tragic fallout of gang-related activity in the borough. It's a black woman that got shot here due to these folks. Yeah, see, y'all probably thought I was going to get up here and say, oh, these were some Negroes. Nah. Nope. Not at all. Baron Brown, Jason Crowder, Jason Ortiz, Alan Floyd, Gote. Yeah. Yep. I'm just saying. One thing I want to do real quick. When he was talking about taking a fade and then issues in terms of black folks getting along or whatever the case may be, I wanted to play something. I wanted to play something really constructive. How did we get here? How did we get to this point? Well, let's look at some history. How did we even end up in these situations? Well, I'll let the doctor speak for himself.
Collective, cooperative economics. That's what you should be focusing on. Now let's look at that. Collective, cooperative. What does that mean? That means coming together as a people, playing as a group. Why? Because you see, racism is a group sport. It's a team sport. Either you play as a team or you lose by default. That's your problem. You're not playing as a team. You have never played as a team. That's your problem. You cannot talk about coming to this ceremony and start talking about collective and cooperative economics without understanding at one point you're playing games with yourself. And so that's the first problem. The second problem is understanding what economics is. Economics is a Greek word. It comes from the word which Greek meaning getting one's domestic house in order. So if you'll start talking about collective, coming together as a group, or collectively, cooperative, doing what? Getting one's house in order. You have not done that. No blacks in this country has done that.
Now, before we go any further, for y'all that don't know about Dr. Claude Anderson, he's been in the fight for reparations for foundational black Americans for well over 50 years. Well over 50 years he's been putting in the work. Your Congressional Black Caucus, they didn't want to sit down and meet with him. They didn't want to sit down and meet with Dr. Claude Anderson because most of them Negroes were Sambos. That's why. They did not want to meet with this brother because they were all about self. As I told y'all before, when you look at the Hispanic caucus. They talk about Latins, they talk about Hispanics, they talk about they people. When you go to the Congressional Black Caucus, they start talking about black and people of color, minority, all of that. Let's go to their website. Let's see if they changed it. Let's see if they made any updates. They might have heard us speak and might have made a few changes. Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. What is this? What is this? Did they change it? They might have made some changes. But let's look at the vision and the mission. Because the website looks profoundly different. Oh, no, this one's a little different. Here we go. Now remember, about the CBC. Now, they said they fought for the last 50 years. Voter suppression. They don't mention reparations. Voter suppression, racial health disparities, minority-owned businesses, promoting U.S. foreign policy initiatives in Africa. They don't promote policy initiatives here for the descendants of slaves. They just met with the African president not too long ago. He didn't mention anything about black Americans getting reparations. Very interesting, ain't it? You got Biscuit Clyburn down here. Of course, Barbara Lee. Ain't said nothing about reparations. Minority-owned businesses. Expanding access to capital contracts and counseling for minority-owned businesses. These are some of the weasel words. Racial health disparities. Black has not been mentioned yet. Just Congressional Black Caucus right here. We haven't got the black yet. African Americans and other marginalized communities to achieve the American dream. Agenda. What is the agenda? Working with the Biden-Harris administration. Voting Rights Act. No, we haven't seen anything about reparations. I'm telling y'all. Let's keep going. Black and brown. All right. Climate change. Climate change. Let's keep going. Healthcare. Okay, we're going to housing. Jail population. Mr. 94 crime bill. These Negroes signed up for the 94 crime bill. Let's not forget that. They got the founding members meeting in South Africa. Now, this is one thing. This is another thing that, now this part right here, when they always talk about, well, you're hearing this narrative that black folks here in America didn't do nothing. Apartheid came down due to us. We was digging into their heels about this apartheid over there. I'm going to go back to Claude Anderson, but I want y'all to see this. Nothing about reparations. Nothing about an anti-black crime bill. All right. Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Let's go here. Founded. Rules of House of Representative. for the Hispanic members of Congress. Hispanics in the U.S., Puerto Rico, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. Okay, now, right to the point. Right to the point. Immediately to the point. This is all the members. You didn't hear no black and brown. Nothing about black and brown. The formation of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the fact that we joined together, is a sign of the growing power of our community, and we are looking forward to strengthening the federal commitment to Hispanic citizens. That is their statement in 1976. Do they mention anything about black and brown? From the Carter administration to the Clinton administration, the Reagan administration, the George W. Bush administration, the Obama administration, the Trump administration, the Biden administration. From 1978, celebrating our Latina leaders. Still haven't seen anything about black and brown. I think I could rest my case. There's nothing else I need to say about that.
You've been playing not to win, but play to lose. And so that's the first point. Now, why haven't we come together and done these things that were recommended and incorporated into Ujima for Kwanzaa? Here's the first thing, is that throughout history, you must have a driving element to bring people together. You must have some force to pull you together. All around this world, one of the first things people used throughout history was religion. Religion was a driving force to bring people together and unite them. Everybody on earth has done that, except certain people. Let's go back to start with back in history, when the Arabs were the first ones to enslave black folk in the world. They were the first enslavers. They still enslaving you all around the world. Right now in Sudan, Ethiopia, Mauritania, they're still selling black for $150 each.
Facts. Fair use, YouTube.
But they had one thing going for them. They knew how to protect collectivism and cooperation. They came in as a group. So about 765 AD, they started using their religion to begin to pull themselves together and practice economics. And so they marched into Africa in 756 AD, and saying, we're going into Africa in the search of the 3 G's, God, glory, and gold. That was way back. They understood that. They started using it. They started exporting blacks out of Africa. And in the course of the last 1,300 years, they've shipped out over 13 million black folk around the world in slavery. They made money off of it. But they stayed together, and they knew how to get money and make it.
See, this is how you know you got a real scholar, not some of these babbling Harriet Tubman didn't fight for us type Negroes. I'm not even going to mention this nigga's name. You don't have these babbling Negroes where they can't never bring. It comes out just like this. When you listen to John Henry Clark, when you listen to Dr. Claude Anderson, they're not one of these Cadillac, we's got to overcome type niggas. When they start talking, they're very intricate in the way that they dissect history. And it comes off just like a blade over butter. It's easy. That's how you know you got a real scholar. Not some bought and paid Negro that you done spent $50,000 a year to listen to. That'll point you to the Congressional Black Caucus website and say, yeah, we did a real good job. No, this is how they sound. This is someone that sounds invested.
The religion to drive the economics for their people. Then following them up comes the Catholics. You see, we got that. See, here you come up now about 1400s, something else happened. They began to use religion. See, Henry the Navigator went off the coast of Africa, picked up about 16 blacks, Africans, and took them back to Italy and gave them to the Pope in the Vatican. And says, here's some people that right now, they're not together, they're disorganized. I got 16 of them, I picked up, you can have them, and gave them to him. And the Pope, they used those blacks from about 1445 all the way up to about 1488. They used them for what? For servants, slaves. And by 1488, something happened. And it came out through Pope Innocent. Pope Innocent, the Catholic Pope, said, hey, this is a good thing. He said, now, up to this time throughout history, contrary to what you all hear today from the Hannity and the Fox Channel, that everybody's been enslaved, so consequently there's no use in being sensitive about black folk preaching about slavery, because blacks are they're not no exception. People have been enslaved people since the Garden of Eden. That's a lie. Up to 1488, when Pope Innocent raised this issue, you could only be a slave any place by three things. One, for personal indebtedness. Two, by being through religious persecution.
Fair use, YouTube. Fair use, YouTube.
Or four, by being a prisoner of war. That was the only three reasons they were enslaved the people in the world. But Pope Innocent put out a public edict in 1488, said this is such a good thing for using these people. Let's put in another factor. Let's use these people anytime. Don't enslave anybody else. No Indians, no Arabs, nobody else. Enslave these people. And that was in 1488. And that's that started slavery. And that made black folk very special, different people from anybody else on earth. And when Columbus discovered America, about 5 years later, and he found this land over here, Coates discovered, and went back to Europe. Europe was a decimated, crime-ridden, infested city. A continent was going down the toilet, could not make it, criminalized. And all of a sudden they were trying their best to figure out how do we resuscitate the entire European continent with nothing. Our people are starved to death. And when Columbus came back, he said, I found an answer. I found land across the ocean. And we call it the Americas, North America, Central America, South America. The land is not very well inhabited. We can go over there and use that land. And all of a sudden they said that. They said, in fact, going back to what Pope Innocent said, we got a labor we can use. And from that moment on, something happened that's very important. We started talking about collective economics. At that point in time, they said that they came up with a new concept. Prior to that time, that mercantilism was the factor for economics. Everything was mercantilism. But at that point in time, they said we got a new thing. If we could be able to get land, free land, and get this black labor, this free black labor, and we merge those two together, we got a good thing. And they did that. They came up with a concept called capitalism. Capitalism meaning, now remember this is very important if you're going to start talking about collective and cooperative economics. Don't forget this, what capitalism is. Don't let anybody badmouth capitalism. You say, well, capitalism is not bad. The only reason we've never been able to use it, that's your problem. Don't badmouth something that you never used. And so capitalism, they said capitalism would be learning how to own the land, the tools, and the resources, and use other people's labor to enhance you and enrich you. That is capitalism. I'm going to say it to you again. You got to get control of the land, the tools, and the resources, and use other people's labor to enhance yourself with wealth and power and resources. Thank you, baby. Just like being up at Northwestern again. And so, and that's the basis of capitalism. And that started in Europe about 1503 and 1505. And that once they got that set up, another thing, about 10 to 15 years later, another concept popped up called politics. And you have to understand this. Politics has no power. Don't mess around with politics unless you understand what you're dealing with. Politics is simply a process that came into existence in the 15th century that says what? It says that based on a simple premise of quid pro quo. It's a process that decides who's going to get what benefits out of life.
And see, this is what a lot of times when young folks get shamed by the old civil rights generation, when they start talking this well, they died so you could vote, so you gotta vote Joe, vote blue no matter who, and then you get some niggas talking about like, no, you're supposed to get something for your vote. You are supposed to get something specific for your vote. They tell black folks they don't got no money, and then the LGBT in Ukraine shows up. And there's plenty of money when they show up or the illegals show up. No, you're supposed to get something for your vote. He's going to break that down very simply.
So they started politics as we know it today. That started about 1515 or 1520, in that general time frame. Politics' primary responsibility is to protect those people who got the money. Is to take care of that. What controls politics is economics. The biggest force you got in this country, the most powerful force is economic power. Politics will do anything that economics wants to do. That's why this country right now, you got about 658 white multi-billionaires in this country. That's who controls this country. No politics. They tell the politicians what to do. That's what Donald Trump's been trying to tell you all. And they're going to tell you, well, we got to go out and vote. Vote ain't worth a quarter.
Come on.
Vote doesn't change anything. People who own the control the system control the votes. But I'm going to get to that a little later. So when they came to America, now they got a new concept. That new concept is going to be called racism. Because when they matched those two together, that brought all whites began to merge in. They began to play economics in Europe. They came together to practice it. And so what happened? 9 European nations started coming to America, and to Latin America, South America, Central America, looking for what? Free land.
Yeah.
And they came over, that became the first thing, that was the first indication of what's going to be called racism. Racism is a competitive relationship between groups. Remember this. Racism is a competitive relationship between groups. It has nothing in the world to do with an individual. Quit letting people call you a racist. Racism doesn't exist with an individual. It's based on a group phenomenon. It's a group factor. And to be a racist, you must be a part of, associated with, identified with those who got the wealth and power. That's racism. It's a competitive relationship between groups of people who are competing for the ownership and control of wealth, resources, and power. And once they get it, they then use it against another weaker group. That's why I hear people say, well, Farrakhan's a racist. Farrakhan ain't no way on earth Farrakhan never be a racist. Farrakhan can't tell white folk what the hell to do. He can't do anything. He can't control no white folk, tell them when they can live, who they can marry, when they going to school. You got to have power and wealth. You got to have the economic wealth and power to be a racist. And I'm sick and tired of black folk always let somebody tell you black folk, if y'all start looking out for y'all will be a racist. Forget that crap. You cannot black no place on earth black folk can be a racist. So they came to America with the new concept called racism. And now the game is going to plan. But see, whites had organized, all those European nations, 9 European nations organized to come to this country.
So when you start hearing the whole thing on, black folks was the one that perpetuated the gangster rap and they created crime and crack and all this. No. That was engineered. Now, of course, Negroes start doing it and stuff like that. Probably got a, poverty, scarcity, all of that. But that was engineered. I mean, literally, you have the U.S. government that was working with Contra groups down in Nicaragua. They literally engineered it. Go look up the story on Freeway Ricks. Hell, go watch Snowfall. It was engineered. From the rooter to the tutor, it was engineered. And in terms of, gangster rap and stuff like that, I mean, they banned it. You can't name one song that's a drill song right now that they banned. Why? That's $1 million question that I've been asking on the podcast. Nobody can answer it. Why did they drill? Why did they ban? Why are they not banning any drill rap? It's 10 times more violent than the NWA and all the gangster rap, the so-called gangster rap is 10 times more violent. I mean, we literally got video and Twitter, the ops dropping locations, and I mean, literally, these niggas is actually committing crimes on the damn internet. 10 times more violent. In our faces. Back in the 80s and stuff, you smoke somebody, man, you don't know who did it. Wasn't no cameras like that. There's cameras everywhere now. But they banned rap early on. They tried to ban rap early on. Why is that? They tried to ban it early on.
Portugal, France, Italy, French, German, Russians, Norway, they all came here in Spain to what? To look for wealth and power. When they came here, then the game started. But they were organized, they were collective, and they were cooperating. They were together. And they brought certain people here to make sure that you were not together. And they brought you from different tribes and split you up. Make sure that those who talk the same language could even associate together. And they disaggregated you. Now we're in the United States. Now we're at the beginning of this. Let's go up to the 1700s. When they got here, all of a sudden they said, we're going to build a democracy. We're going to build a new nation. We're going to build a land of opportunity. And so I said, what we're going to do, let's write a constitution. So they wrote the Constitution in 17 and ratified it in 1789. And in that Constitution, it said what you are today. And I'm sick and tired again. You're going to get sick of hearing me saying I'm sick. But I'm sick and tired of black folk getting into political office, running for office, and getting into a legislature, getting into a law firm, and don't even understand the Constitution. Talking about, well, we got constitutional rights. You don't have any constitutional rights. No place in the Constitution does it give black folk any rights. And when the planning committee for the right to draft the Constitution met in Philadelphia, they spent an entire week talking, and most of the subject was that it was on what they're going to do with black folk in America. They said, we're going to write a constitutional document. And in that document that we write,
and see, here's the thing.
We got to make sure that
this is the thing, whenever you have groups or anybody that tries to compare their situation to ours, it doesn't come correct. It's not parallel because nothing was written against them. When you have somebody that's an immigrant that says, oh, well, you black Americans, we have the same plight and all that. No, we don't, because you were not written in specific in regards to the Constitution. You came here willingly. You don't have the same plight. You don't have the same grievances against the United States. You simply don't.
I think it's perfectly clear on who's going to get what in the country. So when they met, they spent a whole week with the doors locked, guards on the doors, and the shutters drawn, and sit and debated. How do we in the world draft a Constitution of the United States, but at the same time talking about the land of democracy, the cradle of democracy, the land of opportunity, free from all? How do we say that God has given every human being inalienable rights for life, liberty, and the pursuit of what? No, it's wrong. It was property. They changed it later. That's why they give it the fugitive slave laws in 1850 and again in 1890 and 1850. It was property. And so Thomas Jefferson said, what are we going to do then? They said, they asked Thomas Jefferson to write the document, but make sure these black folk don't understand what's going on. So they wrote that document. What that document says is when it said, we the people, we the citizens, they were not talking about black folk.
That's right.
We are talking about the American people. Right now, you go to the Fox Channel, they're always talking about the American people did this. They are talking about you. They said, what we would do, they said, here's what we would do. Every time we're talking about white folk, we'll use very specific language. The American people, citizens, stuff like that, and the general population. They never say that means white folk. When you got the black folk in the Constitution, and I keep saying how these people go to law school and get law degrees and understand this. They use amorphic terms, ambiguous terms,
broad and ambiguous terms
to define you all. They call you when they look at the Constitution, read all those documents, and it says those people, those others, those indebted, those in bondage, that specific property, that unhappy lot. They're talking about you. They're not talking. There's no place in the Constitution that says anything about black folk. They call you 3/5 of a human being. They call you property. They call you equal to a field animal. How in the world do you think they're sitting talking about, well, the Constitution never promised you anything? So please don't go to any one of these demonstrations that I can hear on TV talking about the Constitution promised you nothing. And all they did was organize all the whites. And that the Constitution became an affirmative action plan. The first affirmative action plan in the nation was written by Thomas Jefferson.
So there we go. So when they talk about, black folks, affirmative action, freebies, handouts, they are the pharaoh of freebies. Race soldiers got nothing but free land and freebies. They didn't work for nothing. They're affirmative action welfare recipients.
And that group, planning group, which called the colonial powers of the founding fathers. That was an affirmative action plan for whites. And here's the other point you have to remember before I get to the end of my little speech tonight. It became the first affirmative action plan, but it also put whites into a protected class. Critically, you're in a protected class with the affirmative action and the Constitution. And then they set up the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of the United States is the guardian of the status quo that was put out, laid out for you all in the Constitution. Make sure whites up here and you're down here. The United States Constitution, the Supreme Court is the most racist organization on earth. They're the guardian of racism. That's why the first 57 people appointed to the United States Supreme Court were slave owners. And out of another 60-something that's been appointed since then, they're white racists. They never put a black man of any substance on the Supreme Court. They put one guy who was very strong and he was he was strong enough, the first black president. Personal Assembly Court. I loved him. He tried the best he could, but he's playing against the odds. The guy you got on it now, I don't even call that a black man. I don't even know what that is. What is that? What's his name? Clarence Lee? Yeah. So we only had one black man on the Supreme Court out of over 120. The last thing you should do is be going to the Supreme Court and looking for justice in the court system. You can't get it. It's not there. They're going to reinforce what's in the Constitution. And surprisingly, they don't even have the authority to do that. The United States Supreme Court does not have the authority to do anything with black folk. All these issues y'all are taking to the courts about civil rights, discrimination, racism, and going to the court system. The courts can't help you. They're not going to help you. That's why the Supreme Court has never done not one single solid thing, positive for black folk. Everybody does something that incidentally help black folk here and there. That was not their intent. They had no intention of doing anything to you. Their primary responsibility is to maintain the status quo. And the little authority exercising now over you didn't even come into existence until about 1803 in the Marlboro and Madison decision. When all of a sudden, in the Madison-Marlboro decision, they jumped in and started exercising authority they didn't have and got involved in a case. That was the first time they ever left because of what they were assigned to do in the Constitution. The Supreme Court has three things they can do. One, they can get involved in ambassadorial appointments. Two, they can go and get involved in lower case litigation. And three, they can hold court on anybody who fails to carry out his federal responsibilities. That's the only thing. But they do not have authority to overrule Congress. Now, why is this important? Here's what we're coming to. We're talking about getting you all together, playing cooperative economics and collective economics. The only time it was challenged was by a guy named Dred Scott in 1857.
Now remember,
1857, Dred Scott says, "I'm free."
Now Dred Scott, the Wisconsin Territory, that happened up here in Minnesota. You know the story on that.
I should be able to go back to my own people and live free with them without all this abuse and misuse of me. He said, something is wrong. And Dred Scott was the first one to make that in the Supreme Court. But let me put a quick period and go back to 1790, back to the Constitution. This is very important.
I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. But a lot of times what people will say, well, black folks, they need to do something. There's Tulsa. We were targeted every step of the way. Here's all the revolts. Here's all the revolts. 1526, 1630, 1663, 1776, 1712, 1739, 1800. Slave revolt in the Cherokee Nation, 1842. Creole case, Nat Turner revolt, 1831. Civil War Reconstruction, Detroit race riot, Memphis riot, New Orleans massacre. All these riots, all these massacres, Rosewood. If you notice around the same in Slocum, East St. Louis, around the same exact time that we was doing things for ourselves, the 1900s, off the plantation. In 1935, Ethiopia braced for a war in Italy. Foundational Black Americans from Harlem to Chicago signed up. This was no benefit to us. We did this to help them out. We wasn't having it. Colonel John C. Robinson, service in the Imperial Ethiopian Air Force. I got to get some. I might have to get some T-shirts of this brother. Late 1920s, Robinson couldn't find a place that allowed black people to train as pilots. He decided to build a plane with fellow mechanic aviator Cornelius Coffey. He was a janitor at the Curtis Wright School of Chicago. He was denied in Chicago, all-white school. This wasn't the South. So Robinson, Coffey, and volunteers built the first black-owned airport in the predominantly black town of Robbins, Illinois. Their own airport. 1935, Colonel John C. Robinson made it to Ethiopia. That's him at the Addis Ababa Hotel, 1935. I'm going to put this on save later. Air veteran dead off Ethiopia crash. Born aide to Haile Selassie succumbs to injuries. So he died at 54 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, from injuries during a train crash. They have a statue to that brother that looks like in Ethiopia. Somebody, I don't know who made this. It says, we want to say thank you to African Americans for the past support and the present fight against ongoing injustice. We stand in solidarity as black people. There's a photographic archive of the 1935 to 41 Italo-Ethiopian War. All Harlem out for the defense of Ethiopia now. Send delegates to a special conference. Don't never let anybody tell you the foundational black Americans ain't been putting in work since the 1900s. This was really no benefit to us. We did it because we wanted to help. Putting in non-stop work from Frederick Douglass all the way. You look up Project 3541. They got a monthly series. This is the brothers right here. Sign up, he says. Come on. In the middle of Jim Crow. In the middle of race soldiers from the North and the South. As you know, most of the sundown towns were in the North. Here's more uprisings from 1960 to 2000, they say. Liberty City, Newark, Tampa Bay. This was all around in the 60s. Black folks was tired. Oscar Grant, Baltimore. This is when Obama was telling us we were thugs. Ferguson, unrest. Cincinnati, a lot of race soldiers out there. Man, please. But anyway, this concludes it. You guys got to see the Barefoot Pookie analysis. It was real quick. I wasn't going to go into the whole thing because you had the other crew. They was just kind of babbling on about this and that and all that. So, check out Powernomics. Check out Dr. Claude Anderson's books and everything. It's probably going to get some of the best. You'll have some of the best information you possibly can get. I'm going to keep doing these videos if you guys like this, like it that way. The quality sounds a lot better, so we're going to keep it going.